Thanks, Kathy.
You're welcome.
All right. Okay. And you can see my screen, Kathy, the PowerPoint.
Correct.
All right. So I'm going to be co-presenting today's workshop with my colleague. Sam, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Sam. I'm one of the curriculum design advisors here at BSU. I've just been talking about AI and internship and job search today.
So before we get started, I would really love to hear what drew you to today's workshop. So kind of context for maybe how you feel about AI. So I feel like maybe a good barometer is kind of like, are we pro AI? Are we kind of not so sure? Or are we anti AI? Does anyone want to give a thumbs up, middle, or thumbs down on how you feel about AI?
Like not so sure.
Not so sure in the middle. How about you, Stud?
I mean, good for some things, bad for some other things.
Absolutely. And what drew you to today's workshop?
Well, I was looking, there's like this website I found for like events like on, cause I'm in this ambassadors program.
Oh, nice.
And so this interested me because like I usually use AI for my English classes when I'm like trying to find outlines for what I want to write and stuff. But sometimes like it like tempts me into wanting to just give me what to
Copy
write.
and paste, right?
Yes, so I kind of want to like know how to use it properly.
Absolutely. How about you?
Just kind of see what the overall etiquette is around AI and job search and like the marketplace. You know, like just here on the bottom, a disclaimer on the cover letter. You know, don't copy and paste it. You know, what does an employer think when they get a copy and pasted AI cover letter? Like that's I'm kind of curious what that kind of work looks like these days.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. And then Gabriel, any interest, you're welcome if you want to share kind of what drew you to today's workshop and or how you currently are feeling about AI. All right. We had another student who just joined, Jean, welcome. All right, I'm going to keep moving along here. So for today's presentation, I want to talk a little bit about what we hope you will learn. So starting off, we hope that by the end of today's session, you will be able to explain 2 ways that employers are using AI in their recruiting process. So specific ways. We also hope that you'll be able to identify at least one strategy for making your job or internship search more effective and more kind of efficient and appropriate, right, with the right etiquette. And lastly, thinking about how you can describe to yourself and to others how to use AI ethically in a professional context. So I think we're going to hit upon what both of you were interested in. So to begin, I want to set the stage a little bit. We started talking about this already. Today, we're going to be mainly discussing kind of generative AI, which is probably what you're familiar with, large language models like ChatGPT, right? Kind of it generates information for you to utilize. There are obviously different types of AI, and I will also say that we are not experts. By no means am I an expert in AI, nor is Sam, but we work with employers who are using it, and we also advise students on how to best use it in a certain context. We do have an entire center for AI on campus. I don't know if either of you knew about that. It's relatively new. It just launched last spring. So the Center for AI, I would consider them the go-to people in terms of expertise. They have some really wonderful resources on their website, both for students, for faculty, and kind of general use of AI. So just to kind of, set that stage. And we want to really reiterate that the use of AI is a personal choice. This workshop is not to convince you to use AI. It's really to educate you on, if you decide to use AI, what might that look like and how can you use it effectively and ethically. It's really up to you to consider your own values and how you want to go about using that. So as it says here, AI should support and not replace your own thinking or creativity. So with that being said, any questions before we dive in? We're feeling good. Okay. So how are employers using AI? This is kind of where we're going to start off with. So I would say, generally speaking, employers are really using AI in a lot of contexts, but specific to the recruiting end, employers are using AI to source, really getting candidates, right? To screen candidates, which means figure out if they're qualified. Then to interview candidates to see if they're a good fit, and finally assess them. The goal of employers using AI is to be more efficient. Because with many employers, it's the bottom dollar, right? So if they can save themselves time, money, and energy to bring in a best candidate for a role, that's well worth their time, right? Another piece that a lot of employers are starting to use AI is to try to reduce bias in the hiring. And I know that might sound a little weird because it's technology, but humans are biased by nature, right? And so when we have interviewers, we all have a subjective opinion, whether we realize it or not, right? That unconscious bias. So in some ways, being able to use technology can replace or reduce bias in the recruiting and process. So for today, we're going to focus on three main uses of AI on the employer's end. So first off, applicant tracking systems, and then we'll talk about skill assessments, and finally, video interviews. So to get us started, has anybody heard of that term, applicant tracking system, or ATS? Okay, so this is going to be really, really helpful. And actually, I'm going to pull up a video that we're going to use. Sam, I have to find it now because oh, you know what? I think I actually have it in the notes. See, I was prepared. Let me get my notes here. So we have a really good video that gives a nice introduction to applicant tracking systems. And I'm going to start it at around 50 seconds and jump in. So this is going to give you a little bit of an introduction about what an applicant tracking system is and how employers are using it. So let's just see here. Kathy, let me know if you're having trouble with audio on your end. I'm going to hit play.
No audio.
Okay. So that's going to be a Zoom issue, right? We got to go to share computer sound. Let's try this. How about now, Kathy?
Speed up the process of finding
Correct.
those who
All good.
fit the job requirements. An applicant tracking system pulls specific data and skills that the recruiter is looking for. For example, if Sally from Coffee Mugs Incorporated is looking for a Java developer, including skills like object-oriented programming or Python could increase her interest in your resume, thus increases your chances of being seen. And while not every company uses an ATS, it is so important to know how they work and how to beat them, especially considering that 99% of Fortune 500 companies use them and small to medium businesses are quickly following suit. Within the hiring process, an ATS comes between candidate supply and applicants are screened. See, once you submit your resume, the ATS scans and interprets your information, and then categorizes your experience into buckets like education, skills, and experience. And then once your information is sorted, it's instantly compared to the job description. The ATS scans for keywords like areas of experience, skills, and other qualifications like certifications and degrees. It then ranks your resume based on how well your information matches the job description. And the higher your resume is ranked, the more prioritization your resume will get. Now, if you want to be sure that your resume is exactly where it needs to be in order to ensure that you're getting the best job opportunities, you can get an instant scan of your resume right up here. Okay, so there are two main areas where you can optimize your resume.
We're going to come back to that a little bit later, but essentially what we're seeing is a description of how employers are using applicant tracking systems. And an applicant tracking system basically scans your resume, parses out your information, and identifies if you meet the qualifications, right? So does that kind of make sense? Have you heard of that happening at all with employers scanning your documents? So this is kind of new information. Okay, good for us to talk about, right? So the next piece is skills assessments. And so a skill assessment, I'm going to actually show you some examples here. There's a well-known company called HireVue, and it's the software that they utilize. Essentially, a skills assessment would be when you are in the recruiting process with a company, they might want to assess a certain skill level that you have. Now, not every industry will do this. Certain ones are more common, I would say. But for example, in computer science, they may do a technical assessment to see what level of skill you have, let's say with a certain programming language. Or it could even be in a job in the business world. Maybe it is a position highly focused on customer service and sales, and they're actually identifying what kind of communication skills you have, what type of critical thinking skills you have, what type of motivation you have, right? And competitiveness even. So a skills assessment is something that they could give you before you actually interview with a human. And it kind of assesses your skills in different ways. There are different types of skills assessments. So for example, with HireVue, you can actually see that they have different types. They have game-based assessments. So you can see that an employer would essentially be able to send you a link to a skills assessment, give you a time frame of when you need to complete it by, and you submit it through this online program. The game-based assessments can vary. They might be looking again at different types of skills by the employer, but they're interesting and they're really kind of technology-based assessments to see how you react in certain situations. So these to me just look like, like a computer game, but behind it, it's actually identifying what skills you have. So for some of it, it could be related to, again, communication skills, writing, editing, critical thinking, analytical thinking, technical skills. There's a wide range of things that they're trying to figure out of how you work with people, personality, etc. So these are just a couple examples of it. You can actually go on YouTube and search HireVue sample assessments, and they can kind of walk you through what those might look like. An example for a technical assessment, again, maybe in computer science or something like that. This could be evaluating your coding abilities, again, or your understanding of different programming languages. So these could be coding assessments, to see where you're at with your skills. So this is, again, just a company that actually has a technology for these type of assessments. I just wanted to show you one example that's heavily utilized. But again, for example, with this, an extensive coding assessment, they could assess you on a variety of different languages, right? Or maybe the company has certain skill sets they're looking for, and they would indicate what to assess. So this is an interesting other type. I would say not every industry, again, is going to use this, but it's definitely something to be aware of because it is powered by AI. Questions so far? Okay, lastly, video interviews. Now, what this is really referring to is, again, in the recruiting process, sometimes before an employer interviews you as a human, right, whether on Zoom or in person, they may have you do a self-recorded video interview and submit it as part of the application process. So typically that is using a similar type of software. Actually, HireVue also does that. And it would actually send you a link with a set of interview questions. You would record yourself answering those interview questions one at a time. Often there is a time limit or a counter. So you have your webcam set up, you record yourself answering each question, you save it, you submit it to the employer. Now that employer is using these video-based interviews in advance to save time. Because again, they can't possibly interview, let's say, 150 people for one role. So they do this as an initial screening to sort and filter down to a smaller number of candidates for a Zoom interview or an in-person interview, right? And so being able to understand these pieces of the process is really helpful. There are also, again, tons of videos online of how to tackle these types of AI-based assessments and interviews, but we really want you to be aware that employers are using this. And again, not in every industry. Like in education, you're not going to see this. To be honest, in elementary education, school districts are not typically using a video-based interview. They're using their own version of that with a sample lesson plan in person. So less technology focused, but again, a type of an assessment, right? In computer science, this might be more likely, particularly a technical assessment, or maybe an interview with video. I see this a lot in the business world, where they, again, may have many, many applicants for one position, and so they streamline the process by screening people with skill-based assessments or video interviews before they get to that next stage. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, a question for the video interviews, are we talking AI like looking at the videos, or are those video interviews checked by a human being?
It can vary, I would say both, but many of these, for example, like with HireVue, they are using AI to assess the interview recorded after. And so what it's often doing is it's actually using AI to basically create a transcript of the interview. And so by question, they are tracking and creating a transcript of all the words that come out of your mouth. And then they're evaluating if those words align with the answer that they want to hear, or the skills that they wanted to hear, the experience that they wanted to hear, things of that nature. So mainly it's transcript based in terms of how AI is evaluating those video interviews. There are some AI tools that do additional assessments. For example, length of your answer, rate of your speech. Are you speaking too fast, too slow? Vocabulary used and kind of what level of vocabulary. But I have seen a lot of different tools really trying to remove some of the AI bias in terms of facial recognition, language processing, things of that nature that have sometimes historically been associated with bias in AI technology. So I would say mainly it's transcript and word based, but some companies will also just use it to review by a human in addition to the AI. Does that help kind of give a sense there?
Yeah, so it's essentially the voice input, so it's not like I have a state on my shirt, AI sees it and goes, you have it.
Right, and I think there are different levels of tools and how they assess, but mainly it's starting off with content that you're verbally speaking. Yeah, absolutely. So you're probably thinking at this point, do I actually stand a chance, right? With all these tools and technology before I even get to a human, how am I going to navigate this? But the good news is that job seekers can learn how to optimize their search materials and their strategies for AI and using AI if you so choose, right? So it's allowing you to be smarter and knowing what the employer is doing, but also using AI to your advantage in an ethical and professional way to match that in the search process. So there are so many different use cases, right? So resumes, cover letters, prepping for your own interview, learning how to network effectively and more efficiently, even learning how to evaluate your LinkedIn profile and reach out to people. So there's so many different ways that you can use it as a job seeker to your advantage. But as we've been stating all along, ethical considerations are key, especially when it comes to your own credibility as a professional and your authenticity. So as you were sharing, earlier, how would an employer view a totally AI generated cover letter, right? That is not authentic to you as an individual. It's not your voice. So that would be a negative. And we're going to talk more about that. So let's dive in. We're going to start going through different ways we can use AI as job seekers or internship seekers to your advantage. And I'm just going to check here. So first things first, how do you use AI to streamline your search? So whether you're looking for internships or jobs, AI can help you in pulling postings in mass instead of going to 5 different sites, keyword searching, setting your filters, and then pulling and evaluating. AI can help you with that directly, and it can also help evaluate the job posting. So let's say you find something you're interested in. AI can help you evaluate that particular job in comparison to you, your skills, your experience, and the types of roles you're most interested in. So I'm actually going to have my colleague Sam pop up now and do some live demos of how we can use AI in this capacity to streamline your search. So Sam, feel free to come up, and you are welcome to, it's totally on screen share all around. So if you want to start with, job searching, by all means.
All right, so I'll just use ChatGPT since it's pretty much, I would say by now, the most well-recognized and well-used
So, for example, if you're thinking to yourself, okay, I want to find a job, we'll go with the computer science realm, just because I also already have a sample resume on hand. What you can do is you can actually attach a file for this. Log in or sign up. Really, you're gonna make me do this?
Yeah, or you could copy and paste it in, right?
Yeah, I could copy it. It's not. Sometimes I would say with ChatGPT specifically, if you attempt to copy and paste your resume in, it can sometimes be a little funky, which is why we usually refer to the attached one. But
I can log in. Let me just.
Let me see if Perplexity works better. Perplexity AI is another one of the newer ones that's come out, which I've messed around with a good amount. I personally like it. Everybody has different engines that they work, but just for the sake of ease, I will use this. So this is sample resume. This does not belong to anybody specifically. We just made this some time ago just as an example. So if I copy and paste all the way down. All right, what's that? Copy. Paste into here. Space away, and then what we also have provided, which we have up front as well, is we have a bunch of different already generated prompts. Now, these are ones that I've tested at least a dozen times at this point and have kind of just designed it in a way to just let the AI be able to easily access your information and what you want from it. So for example, for this job search, so you would copy and paste your resume and you would say, I provided you with my resume. You can also just list past jobs if you don't have a resume yet. Please provide me with a comprehensive analysis of my experiences, skills, and education. Then provide me with a list of, say you want 10 jobs in a 15-mile radius of, we'll do Bridgewater State University, for example. And then you can add that are in the computer science career field. Or if you do have a specific job title that you specifically want, you could add that too. And then that I would be a best fit based on my resume. And then I also add under here, use the upload file / link option if for any reason the copy and paste doesn't work. I have noticed that if you have an account or even a pro account, which is usually you have to pay for it, but since you're a student, you can sometimes get the accounts for free for like a year or up to 3 months. The copy and paste may work better. I don't know if that's just the people who own the AI kind of gatekeeping a little bit, but definitely mess around with the copy and paste or uploading an actual file, depending on what works. But for this case, I will copy and paste this prompt. I will put it into, let's see if this will look good. Paste this in. So we now have, I provided you with my, specifically the resume aspect. Please provide me with a comprehensive analysis. Let's do 10 jobs in a 15-mile radius of Bridgewater State University that are in the computer science field that I would be a best fit for based on my resume. Hit go. It will analyze. Now, mind you, this is going to be a whole lot faster than going on Indeed. As Kenny mentioned, you got to do all the search criteria. You're like, okay, I want computer science. I have this, I want this in this radius. I want it around this town in this state and everything. At least by just tossing it all into this search engine instead of Google, it's literally like that. So it gives you a comprehensive analysis, like this is your education, you went to Bridgewater State University. It sees that you were in Dean's List, saw the GPA on it, saw the caseload, all the skills that we had listed, the related experience to specifically computer science that was listed, and then any other work and leadership experience on there. And then it goes, next I will find 10 computer science related roles. Next I will find.
They have the top actions.
Yeah, those like icons.
These are the. That's weird, that's not popping up.
Well, is it with those icons work? Can you click on that right there? Those are the jobs.
So these are, so the way this.
Those are the websites.
Yeah, the way this search engine works is it actually pulls direct sources from the website and then gives you the actual information. It says next time.
Maybe please do.
Yeah, sometimes you do have to re-prompt it if you ask too many things. So maybe in this case, I asked one too many, so on those. There we go. Yeah, if for any reason you run into that little hump, you can just ask it again. So now at least, here are 10 computer science jobs within a 15-mile radius of Bridgewater State University that best fit your resume based on your education, technical skills, and experience. So it gives you a little bit of a little blurb underneath just talking about your skills and experiences, but at least it provides you with the different titles and then the skills that you may use for them. And then you can always jump to the top for any of these links, like under sources. And this is directly where it pulls it from. Now, if you do end up for any reason getting like a pro account or any like upgraded versions, specifically maybe for Perplexity, what you can also do is try different types of the AI search. So what we did was just the basic search aspect, but there's also a research one. So research, for example, may give you more in-depth information on the actual company itself. It may provide you with like their mission statement, their goals, their average salary for different positions. So there's a lot of different uses to the AI. Sometimes it can be a little gatekept depending on what the employers are actually sharing on their website, because at the end of the day, this is just a search engine. It's doing the work for you faster, but it really does depend on how much that it can pull. But at least for this case, it does provide with these specific roles that you can pull from these sources that are above. It's not just random job positions. Like it's not just saying, oh, give me 10 job titles that are in this field. These are actual positions that you can apply for from these links at the top. In the event that you want a little bit more information, you can also tailor the prompts to what you want. I just gave one example of what you can ask. You could say, can I have 5 job positions along with their links to directed links to apply, the salary, the minimum requirements to apply? Like it really is yours to play around with. And that's what I did exactly before this. I played around with a bunch of different prompts to see what works on different search engines. Like maybe this search will work better on Perplexity. Maybe another search will work better on ChatGPT. Another one will work better on, I don't know, what's the one that Microsoft uses? Copilot, I think is the name. It's still going to be faster at the end of the day than just going Google, Indeed, and search through. But you kind of just have to find what works best for you. Which one do you like? And it really is an ongoing conversation in the AI world. Which one do they like more? So I don't know if you want to take back over at least.
So I'd love to hear any like initial reactions to that. Had you ever considered doing something like that to pull jobs?
I assume it was more in theory, but I've never actually done that.
Tested it out, yeah, absolutely. So thanks, Sam. So from there, you know, what we want to reiterate in terms of the job search or internship search is that you can use AI again to gather, to pull, to source postings. That's what you should and can do. But what we don't want you to do is to just pull and gather and apply without reviewing, right? Like anything you find on the internet, you need to use your critical thinking to identify, is this a position that aligns with my interests, my career goals, and my skills? And so as Sam mentioned, one of the key factors is minimum qualifications. Am I actually qualified for this role? Because these job postings will have a lot of information in it. So yes, you can use it as a tool to pull into source, but it's up to you as the candidate to still review and identify if it's the best fit for you to apply for. Awesome. Any questions on that? Okay, so next we're going to talk a little bit about AI for resume optimization. So how can you use AI to do this? So number one, you can use AI to help you tailor your resume for specific jobs. So what that means is if you have an internship or a job description, you always should be kind of customizing your application materials for that role based on what the employer is looking for. What skills are they looking for? what experience are they looking for? What type of company is this? And so you can do that with your own eye, of course, but you can also use AI to help you evaluate and assess it. So that's something we can show you. And eventually that's going to help you put the right keywords on your resume and emphasize the right things, right? But also AI can be used for kind of general baseline help with editing, grammar, sentence structure, and readability, right? So this is all going to help in customizing your resume for the job, but it should also help in making your resume AI compatible. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So I'm going to actually go back to that LinkedIn or the LinkedIn Learning video just to give it, because I think this is super helpful about how to have an AI or ATS friendly
For an ATS,
resume.
format and content. In regards to format, applicant tracking systems are programmed to scan and parse text, which means that any elements of your resume that are heavily formatted can actually cause readability issues. I'm talking images, icons, tables, and columns, which are all considered to be heavily formatted. Using these elements can cause all kinds of readability issues, like covering or shifting your content, or preventing an ATS from parsing sections of your resume. And that's why complex formatting is not recommended. And that being said, perhaps the reason that you did not get called in for an interview was due to your resume format and not your qualifications at all. And because 75% of qualified job seekers are rejected by an ATS due to readability issues, take our advice, use a simple format. Now, in addition to simplifying your format, be sure you also have dedicated labeled sections for your experience, skills, and education, since this is how an ATS categorizes your content. All right, so here's an example of a resume that is.
I'm going to pause there. We're going to send you this video as well so you have access to it, but I would love for Sam to walk us through a little bit of how you can use your resume and use AI to customize it towards a particular job.
So same thing as just the copy and paste from before, except the prompt would be a little bit different this time. So for resume improvements, for example, you can copy and paste your resume. You can go, I'm looking for a job in this specific career field. Can you provide me with, again, you want that analysis of the analysis of the resume. Give me suggestions on how to improve it to better fit. Say you have a more specific job title, an example. Say you're in computer science, but then you want a specific, like an IT desk help job. You could specifically add that position. Or if for any reason you just want the general career field, you can remove that section from the prompt. And then you can say, please provide specific examples of skills that I could add, maybe certifications to obtain, and then just other general resume feedback. That general resume feedback could be like, are your bullet points like well written? Did you quantify your bullet points? Did you highlight your skills correctly? Are your skills industry specific? There's a whole lot that it can give. So yet again, well, I actually wonder if I can instead. I'll do an audible of this. So as you are using AI, especially if you have an account or you're just in the same like conversation, for lack of a better phrase, it still has all of this information stored currently in it. If you refresh the page or if you ask it to start like a whole new prompt, that information will go away. But for the moment, you can ask it for those same information. So let's do, please provide specific examples of skills. Well, I'll edit this slightly. Okay. So I will copy and paste this in here. So please provide specific examples of skills that could be added, certifications that could obtain, and other general resume feedback for the resume that I previously provided. So then, based on your current resume and the latest 2025 technology skills, here's a comprehensive breakdown of recommended skills, certifications, and resume improvement suggestions. So it jumped straight into recommended additions. Now, mind you, this is specific to computer science. So it's mentioning different Programming languages, it's talking about data analytics, well, it's actually mentioning AI too, funnily enough. Just other key factors that can be added, whether it's actual skills or I guess in this case, it can be a mixture of, for different roles like software engineering, web developer. It's giving you a general overview specifically to computer science. For certifications to pursue, it's giving lists of the actual names of them. If you just copy and paste this and throw it into Google, you should be able to find a number of different websites where you can either get it for free or some of them are paid certifications as well. And then for general resume feedback, it's talking about modernized resume formatting, using concise bullet points. You're limiting your resume to one page. Measurable outcomes like increase client base by 15% annually. A non-measurable outcome would be if you just said increase the client base. That's great that you did that, but how much? And then adding any projects that you have, maybe adding any portfolio links. Record your impact, so place technical skills above experience to immediately highlight relevance. Relevancy is super important on a resume. You want the stuff that is most relevant to what you're applying for at the top. So that's what it's specifically asking for here. And just as we've been talking about, add keywords for ATS optimization. It's even telling you, hey, look at the job description, look at the company's website, use the language and the words that they're using in your resume to increase your chances of making it to the next round. Now, I gave it a relatively broad prompt for specific resume, just like help. You could copy and paste just your experiences with your bullet points and say, what can I do better for this specific section of my resume? What can you add to my bullet points? Can you make them sound more professional? Can you give me some ideas of how to quantify it? I'm only giving you one prompt. You can do as many different ones as you want, but this is at least one way to just copy and paste your resume and ask it a question and get immediate feedback. So.
Excellent. What do we think about that? That's helpful, right? So from there, again, if we think about, again, we're not asking AI to write your resume, right? We're asking it to evaluate, to assess, to identify, and that's the difference. So when we go back to our presentation here, and we think about, what we should and what we shouldn't do, you're using AI to enhance your resume through keyword association, customization, and clarity for the job. That's what we're doing, right? What we're not doing is we're not fabricating or making up skills we don't have, experiences that we never did, or again, having AI write your resume for you. That's the difference here. So I would say the same thing goes for cover letters. When we think about that piece of the application process, you can use AI to help you generate an outline. And I think you were talking about that, right? Of like kind of creating an outline for a paper or helping you kind of organize your thoughts a little bit. It also can help you adjust your tone. So you could copy and paste your cover letter in and ask AI to evaluate it for a professional tone. Or you could say, again, keywords for this industry. Maybe you're applying for jobs in marketing, sales. You can identify that. And again, it can help you structure your cover letter. So a good tool is to always start by writing it yourself. And then, using this for some small help on the side. So not writing it for you. And I know you had mentioned earlier, like how would an employer react to a fully written AI cover letter? Oftentimes it's kind of easy for a human to pick it up because we've all seen, how AI writes and it can be very professional, but sometimes it lacks authenticity or a personal tone or personal values or mission. And so that's something that a human can kind of identify, but also the style of writing I've noticed. So AI tends to use a lot of dashes, right, to pause in a sentence. And so a human typically doesn't write like that. We often use commas or we just have, we customize the sentences. So I've noticed that myself. But also, funny enough, AI software tools are evaluating for an AI level meter. So for example, HireVue, right, or an applicant tracking system. Some applicant tracking systems will actually have an add-on that will evaluate your resume or cover letter for potential use of AI. So was this resume written by AI? Which is hilarious because AI is evaluating AI. But there are factors that they would see when they parse the data or parse the text. And if they feel it's a high scoring for AI possibility, that could be a negative on your application. So again, your authenticity, your personal tone and voice in your resume and your cover letter is really important. So we're using it as a tool. We're not using it as an author. Does that make sense? That's the difference here. Okay. I'm going to move on to interview preparation. So we have about 15 more minutes. So you can utilize AI to help you in practicing for interviews. So what do we mean by that? Well, there are different tools that are AI powered to conduct mock interviews. And we actually have one at BSU. It's called Big Interview. I'm going to show you that in a second. But essentially, an AI powered software like Big Interview allows you to record yourself answering interview questions, and then it gives you feedback for your personal usage. And so we have Big Interview on our website. I'm going to just pull that up really quickly. And all students can use it for free. There is a login, and we can send this out as well. So under preparing for an interview, at the bottom here, we have help us prepare current students. And you would actually just log into Big Interview using your Bridgewater login. So your BSU email, your BSU password. When you get in here, you'll see that you can actually, go up to practice, and you can review different practice sets. So if we go to practice sets, you can say, I want to look up practice interview questions based on, industry. And I could say, oh, I'm looking for a job in, the healthcare field. Well, these are various roles in the healthcare field. Maybe I want to try doing a practice interview for like a home health aide job. And so you can kind of pick and choose. Okay, well, let's do this home health aide practice set. I'm going to practice with Pam. And we're going to go, and essentially what it will do, you'll allow your webcam to show, and then you will record yourself answering these questions on the left. It keeps asking me for my camera. But for example, please walk me through your background as a home health aide, right? So you would click that, you would record yourself, and once you finish, you'll submit it. You'll move to the next question.
Walk me through a typical day in your current or most recent job.
So she's asking me the question. If my web camera were available, I would record myself responding. I would submit, go to the next question.
Why are you interested in this particular job opening?
Right, so it's kind of like you're in an interview, but you're practicing. This is a practice interview, a mock interview. Once you submit it, it will actually be able to give you feedback. So it gives you kind of an AI-powered base score, again, on things like content, length of answer, this one for your personal usage, right? Length of answer, tone, pace of voice, volume, all these different things. So you can actually get some ideas on how to improve your practicing. So that's a super quick look, but again, this is called Big Interview. This is a tool that BSU has for all students, and you can access it. And what's cool is you could do a practice interview here, then you could come into our office and meet with one of our career advisors to go through it and say, hey, I did an initial review. I think I need to improve in X, Y, or Z. And we could even do a practice interview human to human. We do that with students all the time. But this is a way to kind of give you a starting point and see what's out there. How cool is that? You like that? Yeah. So a Big Interview, again, is another great tool. So what we're doing in this case is we're using it really for preparation and self-improvement in your interview strategy and skill. But also, again, you could use AI. Let's say you have an interview coming up for a substitute teaching position. You could go on ChatGPT and say, I have an upcoming in-person interview for a substitute teaching position at this school. Please provide me with a list of common interview questions for this type of role. Now you can get some ideas of what they might ask. And you could even re-prompt and say, what are they looking for in these answers? Or again, here's my resume. What skills should I focus on in this interview to emphasize my experience and qualifications? So you can really use it for preparation. And then again, something like Big Interview you can use for improvement. So definitely helpful. What we're not doing in this case is we're not using AI generated answers. You can actually go on YouTube and see examples of people in a Zoom interview, literally live typing into ChatGPT. Yeah, it's on a second screen and it's like telling them what to say. And you can see it because their eyes are going back and forth. So we're not doing that, right? We're using this for preparation and improvement. Okay, how are we doing? We got about 10 more minutes. Additionally, within your internship or job search, you can use AI to help you with networking. When we talk about networking, we really are talking about having conversations with people, communicating with people, reaching out and learning about different career paths, industries, employers, and jobs. So how can you use AI in that context? So first things first, a lot of students will tell us that they're kind of nervous to reach out to somebody they don't know. They don't really know what to say. They don't know how to approach it. So you can use AI to give you some samples of outreach emails. So you can open up ChatGPT and you can say, I am sending a networking request to a professional in the accounting industry. I would like to set up an informational interview with them. What do I say? How do I send? What do I say in my email? And it can actually give you a live prompt, and Sam's done it and it worked really well. Because I was like, that's exactly what I would have advised a student to write. Again, from there, make it your own, right? So you don't just copy and paste that, you tweak it, you adjust it, you put in your personal information in terms of like, this is why I'm reaching out, this is my major, these are my interests, but it gives you a little bit of examples to start from. Additionally, you can use it to help you identify connections. So maybe you could ask it to review LinkedIn. So you could say, I'm looking to set up conversations with people in marketing assistant roles at local nonprofits in the Boston area. Please find, visible LinkedIn profiles that fit this area. And it can actually give you, if it's open and if it's not under like a private setting, they could give you links to people, right? So now you have people that you can go onto LinkedIn and reach out to. Also, you can use it to help you analyze social media activity. So what's going on in this industry? What are some hot topics? What are some things that I might want to know about if I go to a networking event or a professional association meeting? How can I use that? So because of time, I might keep rolling along. But does that give you some ideas for networking of how you can use it? Yeah, so again, helping you to kind of generate some examples and fine tune your communication, but also again, to source people to talk to source people for those conversations and to really strategize your networking. So a lot of times it can be like, well, I don't know anybody. Well, it's really not a matter of who you don't know. It's a matter of who can I learn to know. If that makes any sense. Who can I meet, right? That's what I wanted to say. But in this case, what we're not doing is we are not spamming people with just copy, paste, right? We're not going on LinkedIn and sending out mass messages to people that you haven't reviewed their profile, right? You're just pulling a list. You're not just going to send messages out to all these random people with a copy and paste message from AI. You're still going to customize your messages. You're going to review those people's profiles to make sure they're a good fit, that there's somebody you actually want to talk to. And then you're going to do the communication, right? Also, another cool thing that you can use AI for specific to networking is you can have AI help you in generating posts and graphics for things like LinkedIn. So I don't know how much you use LinkedIn or how familiar you are, but like many kind of social media profiles or platforms, you have the ability to make posts. So some people will do quick, short posts. Some people will actually post like blog articles. Some people will create images. And so you can use AI in this capacity to help you, again, edit, tweak, update like a post. Let's say you wanted to put a post on LinkedIn about a recent research project that you did in one of your classes. You can use AI to help you kind of craft that in sort of a marketing tone. So it sells the skills that you had to use in this project and it kind of markets you on LinkedIn. You could also ask it to help generate an image representative of that particular project or topic. And so we've mainly been talking about text-based AI, but there are graphic images-based AI, and that's a whole nother level. Center for AI can help with that. All right. So to that point with LinkedIn optimization, you can also use it to help you with your profile. So do we have LinkedIn profiles? Do you have a LinkedIn? Do you have LinkedIn? Do you have LinkedIn yet?
Go to LinkedIn.
It's only for your first year, you have time, you got it, definitely do it. So within LinkedIn, you're gonna have a profile, and within your profile, there are sections where you can write a blurb about you, your skills, you can put all of your experiences, you can add projects, you can add certification, skills, education, etc. So again, same thing, it can help you fine tune what you put on there and put it in a sort of a sense where it is marketing your credibility and your qualifications and what you want to put out there. And a headline, one of the things on LinkedIn, if somebody comes across your profile, it says your name, and then it has a headline. And so a headline can be something that's hard to craft, because it's a short little phrase. Some people will just put their job title, but I would encourage you to be creative in creating a headline for your LinkedIn. So for example, you could say something like aspiring, elementary educator with a passion for serving and ensuring student success, right? Or I made that up, but LinkedIn, AI can help you craft what that sounds like, how to tailor it to the industry and things of that nature. And also, if you find a posting on LinkedIn, you can have AI kind of analyze it to see if it's a good fit based on your profile or your resume. So really, in this case, you're using AI to help you improve your profile visibility or even kind of search engine optimization, right? Like, will your profile show up in more search results on LinkedIn because it's more associated with the types of jobs you want and the industry that you're trying to get into? So that's where it helps you. But what we're not doing is using AI to really kind of fully control your professional identity. So what I mean by that is what you post on there, again, still needs to be your voice, still needs to be your tone, your interest, your skills, your passions, your values as a professional. And that really needs to come across in the writing. Okay. So this, I think, is our last slide here. So just to re-emphasize what you're not going to do with AI in the search, we are not using AI to falsify your skills, experience, qualifications. We're not misrepresenting just because AI told me these are the top skills in my field. Well, that's great, but do I have those skills yet? Maybe not. But now I know I can develop them. I know what to develop, right? We are not relying on AI without personal input. So we're not just copying and pasting. We're not using our critical thinking skills to say, does this sound right? Or even cross-referencing the source, right? So Sam showed you on Perplexity, it shows the sources of where it pulled from. So it's good to periodically review and check, right? That's important as humans. Also, in context of being a student or at your job, potentially, or internship, you're not going to violate any particular policies on AI use. So you might have, certain professors that are all for it and others that are not. You have to adhere to whatever the policies are in the given environment that you're in. And if you're not sure what the policies are, usually there's a statement online, and again, Center for AI would be a great place to start, and talking to your professors as well. And lastly, again, we're not using AI to generate misleading or deceptive content. So anything that would be unethical or, again, falsifying who you are in a application or interview or recruitment process, right? You are your best salesperson, but you often have to start somewhere with documents. But those documents have to match who you are as a human, right? So all coming back to authenticity and integrity as an individual in the job and internship search. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second. And I'm just going to emphasize that we would love to continue to work with you on this topic, or really any topic. You do have a handout for our office, and that gives you a sense of all the remaining events happening this fall semester. And there's also the handout with some of the prompts that Sam showed. And so that can definitely be helpful to test out if you're interested. We do have a workshop this Thursday, actually, for our Internship 201, how to strategize your internship search. So if that's something you're interested in learning more about, check that out on Handshake, you can register there. And feel free to register for any of the additional events. But I will stick around for a couple more minutes for any questions. But I just want to thank you all for being here today and, participating and giving some great questions. And hope that this was helpful for you.
Thank you.
And thank you to those online. Thank you so much, Gabriel. We're going to stop recording, but thank you again so much. And Gabriel, if you have questions, feel free to let me know because I can hear you and I'll work with the students in the room too.